Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really diving into something quite specific, the intersection of personal crisis and, well, unconventional healing approaches. We're looking at the intense emotional stress that neurodivergent individuals can experience, particularly those who get diagnosed late with things like high-functioning autism, Asperger's, or ADHD, and we're exploring a specialized protocol aimed at resolving core emotional trauma. Our main source here is material from a certified life coach who actually got his own diagnosis, level 1 autistic Asperger's and ADHD, very late, like 51 or 52. And his perspective is really shaped by this. He argues that the failure of his 25-year marriage wasn't really because he was neurodivergent, but because of the complex trauma, the CPTSD, that built up from not knowing he was.
Right. And that lack of awareness, it really sets the stage for, well, for a lot of difficulty. So our mission today for you listening is to try and understand if there's a physiological difference in how trauma hits neurodivergent people. We'll look at why standard talk therapy might not always work or might even miss the root cause entirely. And then we'll really dig into the mechanics of this somatic energy release protocol he developed. It's kind of a mix of things: spiritual ideas, recovery work, behavioral health knowledge, and the claim is pretty bold: rapid, lasting trauma resolution.
Okay, so let's start with that personal cost, the late diagnosis reality. He really emphasizes that because no one knew why he was the way he was.
Yeah.
You know, sensory issues, communication differences, all those things just got seen as character flaws or like he was doing it on purpose.
Yeah, and that misunderstanding just fuels conflict, doesn't it?
Exactly. It fueled arguments, compounded the trauma, and ultimately, he feels, led to the marriage ending.
And importantly, this isn't just one person's story. He highlights that this pattern-late diagnosis, high-functioning autism, often leads to some really devastating outcomes later on. We're talking losing families, jobs, connections with kids, sometimes ending up quite isolated, depressed. It's a kind of cumulative burden.
A cumulative trauma.
Precisely.
Okay.
And to really drive home how severe this can get, the source material cites a statistic that's, well, it's deeply concerning. It suggests this group faces a suicide rate maybe 3 to 7 times higher than average.
3 to 7 times. Wow.
Yeah, it really speaks to the level of burnout, the kind of existential weight of constantly trying to fit into a neurotypical world without the right internal map or self-understanding.
And the systems meant to help often fail. I mean, he mentions 15 years in therapy.
15 years, 7 different therapists, couples counseling included.
And nobody flagged the autism or ADHD.
Apparently not. It just highlights this massive gap, you know? A gap where maybe traditional approaches aren't seeing the full picture, the underlying neurotype.
And this protocol is trying to step into that gap.
Exactly. So if we link that systemic failure to the emotional fallout, what you get is this undiagnosed neurodivergent experience plus years of feeling invalidated, misunderstood. It brews into CPTSD. And interestingly, the source draws a parallel between the resulting symptoms, you know, severe mood swings, intense relationship patterns, high reactivity, even self-harming behaviors, or he says it looks functionally like borderline personality disorder, BPD.
Okay, that's a really strong comparison, equating CPTSD symptoms directly with BPD.
Yeah.
Why does he make that connection so forcefully? Is he saying is BPD?
Not necessarily saying is BPD from a diagnostic manual standpoint, but rather that the outward manifestation, the emotional dysregulation, the relationship chaos looks incredibly similar. His focus seems to be on the source of that chaos being fundamentally physiological, not just psychological.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the neurobiology he discusses. The idea is that in autism, the amygdala, the brain's sort of threat detector or fight-flight center, might not prune down like it typically does during development, so it might remain larger and therefore inherently more reactive. His own psychiatrist apparently described his system as having no ramp-up.
No ramp-up.
Meaning it doesn't build gradually, it goes from 0 to 100 instantly. It's like the system is just always on alert.
Right. So when a trigger hits, and that could be, what, a harsh word? A sudden noise?
Or even something seemingly minor, like a checked tire light on the car dashboard, as he mentions.
Okay, so when that trigger happens, what's the immediate physical reaction?
The description used is really vivid. He says the body instantly shifts into a state as if it's physically falling down a flight of stairs.
Wow. Falling down stairs.
Yeah. It's that level of sudden, primal survival activation, even from what a neurotypical person might just see as a minor annoyance.
That image, falling down stairs, it really reframes what might look like an overreaction from the outside.
Yeah.
Because if your body genuinely believes it's in that level of peril, survival mode kicks in,
Absolutely.
and the brain starts shedding everything non-essential for immediate survival,
Right.
which explains why things like compassion, active listening, calm discussion,
Hmm.
they just vanish in an argument.
They go out the window.
Because the person isn't trying to win the argument logically, they're biologically driven to stop the perceived threat, which might be the argument itself.
Precisely. And the very tool that high-functioning autistic individuals often rely on most heavily, their intellects, their logical mind, the part they use to navigate the world and maybe mask difficulties,
It just gets completely swamped.
totally overridden by the panic response. The intellectual analysis fails right when it feels like it's needed most.
Okay, so if the intellect is offline in those moments, and 15 years of talk therapy didn't resolve the underlying CPTSD, where does this somatic approach come in? How does it try to work by sort of bypassing that rational mind?
Well, it starts with redefining trauma, drawing from somatic thinking and recovery principles. Trauma isn't just the bad thing that happened in the past. It's seen as a physiological or emotional state that got interrupted somehow. It didn't get to complete its natural cycle.
It got stuck.
Exactly. Stuck energy trapped in the body. And the idea is this can linger for decades, maybe even affecting us at a cellular level. You hear echoes of this in works like the body keeps the score.
Right. So that stuck energy needs a release valve, basically.
Yeah.
What's the actual process, the mechanism of this somatic energy release protocol?
It's described as a very structured, guided process. First step is identifying the specific emotion that needs addressing, then, crucially, relaxing the body. But the real key ingredient seems to be introducing this state of profound meditative peace. He calls it the peace of God.
Okay, a state of peace.
Yes, and this peace acts like a buffer or a cushion, and that cushion is vital.
What?
Because it creates a safe container. It allows the person to actually feel the stored, often overwhelming trauma emotion within their body, but without being re-traumatized by it. It lets that blocked energy cycle finally complete.
So feeling the feeling, but safely because of this peace cushion.
That's the idea.
And it sounds like it requires deliberately setting aside the thinking mind, the part that tells stories about the feeling.
Absolutely, that's central. The logical mind, the one talk therapy engages, often weaves narratives around the trauma, which can inadvertently keep the emotion locked in place. This somatic method aims to bypass that narrative layer entirely. By focusing on the physical sensation while holding onto that state of peace, the body gets a chance to process and release what it's been holding onto.
And the claims about effectiveness are pretty significant. A 95 to 100% success rate if people fully engage.
Yeah.
And permanent resolution.
Yeah, those are very strong claims in behavioral health. Permanent is the key word.
What's the reasoning behind why it would be permanent? How does it supposedly stick?
The argument is that it sticks because they're not just managing symptoms, they're resolving the finite core root of the problem. He reports that the first person he coached using this about 6 years prior still experiences that sense of peace, and the reduced anxiety doesn't come back. It's considered permanent because once that specific pocket of trapped energy is released and the cycle completes, there's nothing left to fuel that particular trauma response. It's gone.
Okay, if it's about getting to the root, not just mowing the dandelions of anxiety and anger.
Yeah.
What are these roots? You call them tap roots, the 5 core trauma emotions that, once resolved, supposedly make the surface stuff dissolve.
Right. The idea is if you pull these 5 main roots, the weeds, like the anger, the avoidance, the reactivity that characterize CPTSD, don't have anything to grow from. So the 5 core trauma-based taproots identified are 1, self-loathing or self-hatred.
Okay.
2, a sense that life is meaningless. This is described as the root of hopeless despair.
Right.
3, overwhelming sadness and grief, often stuff that's been pushed down for years, decades even. 4, emotional pain and trauma itself, or past victimization. And the source clarifies this isn't about blame, it's simply recognizing that suffering is an emotion that needs to be felt to be resolved.
Got it. Suffering is an emotion.
And 5, primal fear of survival, sheer terror.
Wow, those are deep. Primal fear, self-loathing, meaninglessness.
They're foundational, yeah.
So given the claimed success rate, what stops it from working? If the emotions are cushioned, it can't just be that they're too hard to feel.
The main barrier identified is resistance, psychological resistance. It comes down to a person's willingness to actually surrender their existing belief systems, step out of their comfort zones, especially the comfort zone of relying on the intellect, the logical mind, to fix an emotional problem. That seems to be the biggest hurdle.
And the source material points to a specific pattern here, related to gender, that men are more likely to stop the process.
Yes, that's a really interesting observation noted in the source. It suggests that men, perhaps due to a combination of neurochemistry and likely strong societal conditioning, tend to be, quote, more married to their thinking, their thoughts, their logical system.
Hmm. Prioritizing thoughts over feelings.
Right. Culturally, men are often taught that difficult emotions hurt, pain, sadness, trauma, are weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
So when those core feelings start to surface during the protocol, the logical mind often jumps in defensively. It tries to distract, maybe with repetitive thoughts, memory loops, even thinking about work emails, anything to avoid feeling that core trauma energy.
A protective mechanism, but one that stops the healing.
Potentially, yes, according to this model.
So putting this all together for you, the listener, the big takeaway seems to be that resolving deep emotional wounds might be more of a skill, a physiological process, than an intellectual puzzle to be solved. And maybe sometimes trying too hard to analyze it with talk therapy can, ironically, wrap more story around the feeling and lock it in deeper.
Yeah, that's the perspective offered. This protocol is positioned as a supplement, not a replacement for all other help, but as a specific tool for these stuck, finite emotions. And the reason it's claimed to be so effective is that it targets these finite pockets of energy. Once they're resolved, completed, they're simply gone. The reactivity tied to them disappears.
Right. And the source links unresolved trauma directly to relationship failure, citing his own divorce. He makes the point that if people don't learn how to actually process and release these difficult core emotions,
Mhm.
they might end up repeating similar patterns. So here's something to think about for your own deep dive. We know the national divorce rate is quite high, maybe 60–65%, depending on the stats you look at. Now, if unresolved core trauma, these kinds of stuck, uncompleted physiological cycles, often stemming from childhood, is a major driver of emotional instability in relationships. What percentage of relationship breakdowns might actually trace back not to fundamental incompatibility or personality flaws, but simply to this unresolved, stuck physiological energy? Just something to consider.